Lights flash, cameras clicking quick. Showtime, super gringo slick. Headlines buzzing like a mix. 20 seconds, that's the fix. Short and sharp, just like a dart. Gringo's antics steal your heart. In a flash, the show will start. Super shorts, that's where we part. Short and sharp, just like a dart. Gringo's antics steal your heart. In a flash, the show will start. Super shorts, that's where we part.
Welcome to another Super Gringo short. I'm your host, the Super Gringo, Sean Armstrong, from my secret base in Brazil. The topic at hand is the troubling reality that academia, our revered bastion of knowledge and enlightenment, is not going to reform anytime soon. Now, I know this may sound disheartening, but let me assure you, acknowledging this reality is the first step towards transformation. Like a cradle nurturing ideas or a crucible forging ideologies, academia has long been a breeding ground for certain narratives that shape our worldviews. Yet it is crucial to recognize that these narratives have often strayed from truth and objectivity. Consider this. How did we arrive at this juncture? It wasn't merely street activists or community organizers who played a role. Rather, there has been an intertwining of academia with activism, a revolving door where professors became street warriors, like Bernardine Dorn, for example, a former member of the Weather Underground who later taught at Northwestern University. Her journey illustrates how academia can cultivate ideologies that challenge conventional norms. The implications of this intertwining extend far beyond university walls. They seep into our K-12 education system and influence federal and state policies on education. We must ask ourselves, what happens when educators are trained to indoctrinate rather than educate? When the primary goal becomes brainwashing rather than enlightening? As history shows us, think Lenin, Stalin, Mao, if you want to control a population effectively, you must seize control over education and media. Education isn't just about imparting knowledge, it's about shaping minds that will become the next generation of leaders and professionals. But if academia refuses to reform itself, what then? We find ourselves in a peculiar situation where industries outside of education are beginning to realize that they can no longer rely on graduates produced by this flawed system. Pragmatism will reign supreme as businesses seek competent workers who can perform actual tasks, not those burdened by bureaucratic dogmas like diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, or environmental social governance, ESG. Like at Elon Musk's approach with Twitter, he reduced the workforce dramatically, yet improved productivity. This shift indicates a growing reluctance among industries to hire recent graduates who may have spent 4 years being indoctrinated instead of educated. We stand at the brink of an awakening, a realization among industry leaders that they need workers who can deliver results rather than those molded by outdated academic ideologies. A disconnect is forming between what academia produces and what industries require. The stage is set for change. And so I ask you, what will it take for universities to recognize their products are defective? What will spark their desire to innovate? History suggests it will be when they feel financial pressure, the moment their degrees begin losing value in the job market, because employers simply cannot afford liabilities masquerading as graduates. The sentiment is already brewing, whispers among wealthy benefactors indicate they are scouting universities based on their values during turbulent times. Notably, since October 7th this year, institutions like Mississippi State University may soon rise as beacons of hope, while Ivy League schools face scrutiny for failing to uphold principles cherished by their foundations. As we navigate these waters together, I urge each one of you here today, let us advocate passionately for accountability within our educational systems. Let us demand quality over conformity. Let us support institutions that prioritize genuine learning over ideological conformity. Remember this quote from Thomas Jefferson: "Enlighten the people generally. Enable them to see that it is their interest to preserve peace and order." Our mission is clear. We must enlighten ourselves first so we can enlighten others. Together, we can foster an environment where education flourishes free from dogma, a place where ideas grow organically without fear or favor. Let's take up this challenge. Let's push back against complacency. Together, we can reshape academia into an institution worthy of calling a true cradle of future generations rather than a crucible forging division. A critical examination of gun violence and societal influences. Imagine for a moment walking into your favorite coffee shop. You grab your usual brew, settle into a cozy corner, and take a deep breath. But just outside, you hear sirens blaring. Another day marked by gun violence. It's a haunting reality that echoes through our streets and our hearts. Today, I want to talk about the pressing issue, not just the guns involved, but the deeper roots of violence that we often overlook. We find ourselves in a political landscape where debates on gun control dominate the conversation. But here's the thing. When we focus solely on firearms as the villains in this narrative, we miss the bigger picture. It's like blaming the paintbrush for a masterpiece or condemning the hammer for building a home. It simply doesn't make sense. Instead, let's take a step back and examine what drives individuals to resort to violence in the first place. First off, let's talk about mental health, an elephant in the room that we can no longer ignore. Reports show that today's youth are facing unprecedented levels of depression, anxiety, and suicidal thoughts. These aren't just statistics, there are children struggling under an immense weight. When these mental health challenges go unaddressed, they can lead to violent behaviors. Yet, instead of tackling these issues head on, providing resources and support, we often fall back on blaming an object, a firearm, that cannot think or act on its own. Now consider this. Equating guns with moral agency is like saying a car drives where it goes or how fast it drives. Just as no one would blame their lamp for casting shadows in dark corners of their mind, we cannot place all responsibility on guns while ignoring societal influences that shape behavior. And speaking of shaping minds, let's turn our attention to schools. Critics argue that educational institutions are increasingly focusing on ideologies around gender identity and social justice at the expense of traditional values. While fostering inclusivity is essential, and I firmly believe it is, there's also something vital about teaching personal accountability. When young people feel defined by external circumstances rather than empowered by their choices, they may develop feelings of hopelessness, a perfect storm for aggression. Let me ask you this. How are we preparing our children for life? Are we equipping them with resilience, or are we handing them pills as quick fixes while neglecting meaningful conversations about coping with adversity? The current generation is among the most medicated in history. Prescriptions for antidepressants have skyrocketed. Medication has its place, but isn't it time we also prioritize emotional development through dialogue? We must teach our kids how to manage stressors effectively rather than relying solely on pharmaceuticals. Let's remember, while discussions around gun control are crucial, they're only part of a much larger puzzle. To reduce violence effectively, we must address mental health crises among youth, critically evaluate educational practices shaping their worldview, and reassess our over-reliance on medications as solutions. So here's my call to action. Let's shift our focus from merely blaming an object like firearms to understanding human behavior shaped by societal influences. Together, let's advocate for better mental health resources in schools. Let's foster environments where resilience is taught alongside inclusivity. Let us empower future generations not just to survive, but thrive without resorting to harm against themselves or others. As Mahatma Gandhi once said, "You must be the change you wish to see in the world." So let us be that change. Let us cultivate compassion over condemnation and understanding over ignorance. Have you ever tried to have a conversation with someone who sees the world only through the lens of race? It's like trying to navigate a maze with no exit. You turn left, you turn right, but all you see is color. Now, I don't want to pick on anyone today, but if you ever want to engage in that kind of talk, just sit down with a Democrat. That's right, race seems to be their favorite subject. But let's take a moment here. Why is it that so many conversations revolve around race or gender? I mean, sure, these are important issues, but isn't it time we shifted our focus back onto what truly matters? Accomplishments, merit, personal responsibility. Now, let me ask you this. When was the last time you heard someone celebrated for their hard work and achievements rather than their demographic background? Think about it. We're so busy categorizing people by how they look or how they identify that we forget about the real story. The story of individual grit and determination. Rhetoric aside, let's be honest, when did being identified by your skin color or your gender become more important than being recognized for who you are as an individual? It's almost as if we're stuck in a never-ending loop where the only thing that matters is what box we check on some form. Surely you've heard that old saying by Martin Luther King Jr., "I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character." Isn't it time we took this dream seriously? When are we going to start emphasizing character over color? When are we going to celebrate accomplishments over identities? Let's think about personal responsibility for a moment. Every single one of us has the power to shape our destiny. No matter where we come from or what challenges life throws at us, we have choices. We can choose to work hard, strive for excellence, and take accountability for our actions. But when our conversations revolve around race and gender alone, aren't we giving ourselves an easy out? Aren't we sidestepping personal responsibility? Now, don't get me wrong. I believe everyone has a right to do what they want as long as it doesn't impede someone else's rights. This is crucial for a thriving society. But diversity should not overshadow meritocracy. It should not eclipse hard work and dedication. After all, wouldn't it be refreshing if our discussions focused on lifting each other up based on achievements rather than dissecting how different or similar we are? Let's change the narrative. Let's challenge ourselves and those around us to prioritize character over color and accomplishments over identities. Engage with people based on what they've done, not just who they are. I urge each one of you today, next time someone tries to steer a conversation into racial waters or muddy gender debates, redirect it. Tell them about successes. Show them what they could accomplish by example. And if they don't want to listen, just walk away. They're lost. Let's create an environment where merit shines brighter than any label ever could, where every person is seen for their unique contributions rather than merely categorized by superficial traits and judged accordingly, positively or negatively. The truth about wage inequality. Let's cut right to the chase. I'm tired. Tired of hearing the phrase wage inequality. You know what? It's time we stop using that term and start talking about what's really going on. Because, let me tell you, there is no wage inequality. There is intelligence inequality, ambition inequality, talent inequality, and yes, even work ethic inequality. Think about it for a second. If you're not getting paid what you believe you're worth, maybe it's not the system that's broke. Maybe it's your understanding of your own value. If you're flipping burgers at McDonald's and think you should be raking in 6 figures a year, well, folks, that's not wage inequality. That's intelligence inequality. And I hate to say it, but that means you're just not thinking straight. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm all for hard work and hustle. But if your idea of showcasing talent is lip syncing on TikTok to a catchy tune while expecting a paycheck that rivals a CEO's salary, let's be real here, your employer might actually be overpaying you. We need to acknowledge something fundamental. Most people today are actually overpaid when we correlate their income with their intelligence or ambition levels. And let's face it, often the biggest culprit behind these disparities is a lack of smarts. If you've got a degree in gender studies but find yourself brewing coffee at your local cafe, guess what? You might just be living proof of this phenomenon. Look around us. In nature itself, there are winners and losers. There are predators and prey. The only reason we don't see humans munching on one another is, well, some folks just aren't appetizing. But if this push for socialism keeps gaining momentum in our country, who knows where it will end up? Instead of blaming the system or pointing fingers at the rich, how about looking in the mirror? Ask yourself, are you doing everything within your power to improve your skills? Are you pushing yourself to reach higher ambitions? Remember this quote from Thomas Edison. Genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. So instead of whining about wage gaps, let's focus on closing those gaps through hard work and determination. Take responsibility for your own financial future. Put down the blame game. Pick up the tools for success. Work harder than anyone else around you. Educate yourself beyond your comfort zone. Strive for excellence, and watch how quickly those so-called inequalities start fading away. Let's talk about a certain someone who seems to have taken it upon himself to school us all through memes. Yes, I'm talking about Robert Reich. You know him, the former labor secretary who spent decades in the government trenches. Now here's the kicker. This guy, who's dedicated his life to public service at what we can all agree is a pretty modest salary, somehow finds himself worth between $4 and $7 million. Now, I don't know about you, but that raises more than just an eyebrow for me. It begs the question, how does a lifelong public servant amass such wealth? This isn't just some random rich dude. This is someone who has worked under at least 4 presidents. And yet, when I ask him this question directly, crickets, silence, not even a meme to respond with. Let's break it down with a little analogy here. Imagine you're watching your favorite sports team play. The coach stands on the sidelines yelling about teamwork and sacrifice while he drives away in a brand new luxury car. You think, wait a minute, how can you preach humility while living large? That's exactly how I feel when I see Reich touting his views on wealth and privilege while sitting on his own pile of money. Now, let me throw out another rhetorical question for you. If we really want to criticize the wealthy elite, if we really want to take a stand against income inequality, shouldn't we start by examining our own habits? If you don't like rich people, why are you buying their stuff? Why do we keep fueling the very system we claim to oppose? Here's where it gets interesting. Robert Reich loves to point fingers at those making big bucks in private sectors, like they're somehow evil incarnates. But let's not forget that many of these rich people create jobs and drive innovation. They are part of the economic engine that keeps our country moving forward. But let's demand more accountability from those who preach one thing while living another. Let's ask ourselves tough questions, not just about others, but also about our choices as consumers. When was the last time you examined where your money goes? Are you supporting businesses that align with your values or just going for convenience? I want to leave you with a quote from none other than Thomas Jefferson. The price of freedom is eternal vigilance. We need to be vigilant not only in our political discourse, but also in our consumer choices. So let's start asking hard questions, not just of others like Robert Reich, but also of ourselves. Let's be conscious consumers and advocates for real change. Together, we can make waves that matter. I want to delve into a topic that is not just about numbers or financial records, but about integrity, accountability, and the very fabric of our republic. We're here to discuss Congressman James Comer's groundbreaking work in his book, All the President's Money. which challenges us to scrutinize the wealth of one of our nation's most prominent families, the Bidens. Imagine for a moment that you are entrusted with the power to lead a nation. What would you do with that power? Would you use it to serve your country or to enrich yourself and your family? These are not just hypothetical questions, they strike at the heart of what we will explore today. In this investigation, we seek answers to pressing questions. How did Joe Biden accumulate his wealth? What role have his family members played in generating this fortune? As we peel back the layers of this narrative, we find alarming revelations. Subpoenaed bank records show an astonishing $27 million flowing from foreign entities into accounts connected to the Biden family. Yet, there's a glaring absence of any legitimate business ownership by them. How can this be justified? Now, let's talk about lobbying, a word that often makes our skin crawl because it speaks to potential corruption lurking behind closed doors. Allegations suggest that access was sold for profit. Family members leveraged their connection to Joe Biden in ways that may breach law, like the Foreign Agent Registration Act. And if that's not enough, there are serious claims of tax evasion. Whistleblowers from the IRS have pointed fingers at unpaid taxes on those same millions. But wait, there's more. The implications don't stop there. We're talking about criminal referrals sent to the Department of Justice related to perjury allegations against Hunter and James Biden. Potential charges loom large. Money laundering, RICO implications, you name it. It begs us all to ask, are we witnessing a cover-up orchestrated by unelected bureaucrats within agencies like the DOJ and FBI? Let me take you back in time for a moment. The history books are filled with tales of political corruption. Yet today's scenario feels eerily familiar as we examine how media narratives shape public perception around these investigations. There's been collaboration between law enforcement agencies and media outlets throughout this saga. How has misinformation influenced what we believe about this family? As I reflect on these findings from all the president's money, I can't help but recall President Ronald Reagan's famous words. The 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. In light of recent events, perhaps those words should now be rephrased as, I'm from Congress and I'm here for accountability. Now is not just a time for discussion, it's a call for action. We must demand transparency from our leaders, not just today but always. Let us advocate for reform within our institutions so future generations will not have their trust betrayed by those sworn into public service. I encourage each one of you, whether you're skeptical or supportive, to read all the president's money. Dive deep into its pages because understanding these issues is essential for safeguarding the republic. Let's remember this pivotal moment in American history, a time when accountability was called into question like never before. Together, let us strive for truth and integrity in politics because ultimately, it is our responsibility as citizens to hold power accountable. That's it for another Super Gringo short. Peace out.
Flash, cameras clicking quick. Showtime, Super Gringo slick. Headlines buzzing like a mix. 20 seconds, that's the fix. Short and sharp, just like a dart. Gringo's antics steal your heart. In a flash, the show will start. Super shorts, that's where we part. Short and sharp, just like a dart. Gringo's antics steal your heart. In a flash, the show will start. Super shorts, that's where we part.